All right, and this is Coco, if we can see Coco. Coco is a fearful dog, and she does not like it when people stand up or move around. She barks and lunges at them. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can use a little positive reinforcement to have the dog actually, instead of lunging, to see that people standing up or moving around is actually a good positive thing. Now, I probably should have done this a minute ago because she did it, and we'll see if she does it again. So I'm going to have you go ahead and kind of make sure you can see her. Coco. You're not going to do it now, huh? Now, she's growling. A lot of us think of growl as aggression. A growl is the dog's way of saying, I disagree. If she disagrees with something and she gets punished for disagreeing, that's going to make her more frustrated. And after a while, she's going to get more and more frustrated, and that sometimes is when the dog does lunge out and bite and things like that. So you should never punish or correct a dog for growling. What you would want to do is either do what I'm about to show you now or increase the distance between the dog and whatever it's reactive to. Now, as a dog psychologist, what I do when I have a dog that has a behavior problem is, first of all, I ask myself, have I taught the dog how it's supposed to behave in that situation? Most of us have not. So then what I do is I recreate the situation, but I make it the easiest version possible. And then I break it into individual steps, and I practice the first step over and over again. Now for dogs, when you want to give them, a lot of people, and the family here has done this kind of like a lot of my clients do, in the inverted order. The dog barks and lunges at the son who lives here. And the guardians say, oh, it's okay, and give him a treat, or her a treat. So the way the dog thinks about it, the stimulus happened, I barked at the son, then I got a reward. I.e., they must like me barking at the son, because barking at the son is what gets me the reward. What we want to do is we want to change that so the dog sees the son getting up or coming into the room as a positive thing. So she's not really doing it now, so I'm just kind of pantomime, but you should be able to use the same technique when she's doing it. So now if I were to actually, let me see it. There we go. So that was a big movement that I had to go to get to her because I've worked really hard to earn her trust earlier. So I'm going to kind of undo what I did, but I'm getting ready to leave. So it's okay if she doesn't like me. So the first thing I would do is when the dog's looking, Coco, give her a treat. And I'm going to make sure she's looking at me. And I can say her name or I can go, give her a treat. So I'm breaking down my effort of standing into small steps. The first step is just what is the first step I'm going to do when I'm going to get up? Is I'm going to do this. Go ahead, give her a treat. So every time I do a movement, when I go back to sitting, I want you to give her a treat. We're not saying anything, we're just rewarding her. So next time I go like this. And kind of keep your hands like at your side so she isn't just looking at the treat. Up. You were early. So you want to wait until I complete the movement. So basically, now I'll stand up. So now David standing means I get a treat. Instead of barking and saying, I protest, I don't want David to get up, the dog's like using ESP saying, get up, get up, get up, get up, get up, because I'm going to get a treat. So I'm going to get up and I take one step and I come back. And she gets a treat. So it could be a whole lot of different activities. I do this a lot with dogs, like for the doorbell. Doorbell rings, what happens? I bark, I run to the door, then somebody comes in the house, and then I bark at them and jump up on them. It's all this excitement that happens. So what I might do instead is I might have our videographer here outside, and we're talking around an earbud. And I say, okay, ring the doorbell. And you ring the doorbell, Coco runs to the front of the house, but nobody gets up to answer the door. She can't see out to the front of the house. She doesn't know it's you. Because right now the doorbell means that excitement's about to come in the house. So we just actually ring the doorbell. She runs to the front of the house, but nobody else gets up and nobody comes in. She doesn't get the validation. And after you do that enough times in a row, she's like, doorbell no longer means we've broken the association. Once we've broken the association, then I might ring the doorbell and give her a treat. Doorbell means I get a treat. And I'm sitting right here. I'm not running at the door. I'm not barking at the door. Now, what I usually do for this sort of thing is I would actually throw the treat on the dog bed. The dog goes to the dog bed, and the second it licks up the treat, I ring the doorbell. Then she's going to run to the door, but nobody gets up and answers the door, and nobody comes in. She's all excited. The excitement kind of dissipates. She kind of comes back over to you, you show her that you have a treat, throw it on the bed. The instant she licks it up on the dog bed, I get the signal and they ring the doorbell. After you do that enough times, the doorbell means I run to the dog bed and get a treat, not that I run to the front door, because nobody comes through the front door. So we're basically just we're kind of creating a situation where the dog is rewarded for doing the behavior that we want, as opposed to the behavior. Right now, we're rewarding the dog for the behavior we don't want. She runs the door and barks, we say, be quiet. Well, for dogs, good attention and bad attention is the same thing. So what we want to do when your dog misbehaves is ask yourself, have I taught the dog how to do that? If I haven't, let's recreate that situation, breaking down individual steps. So for this sitting up and for your guests, you could do this with different guests, and different guests are going to might be more practice needed for males versus females, but make sure the guests are going to listen to you. You'll get a guest like, I'm good with dogs. Look, why'd your dog bite me? Because I asked you not to do that and you did, and you know dogs. So we want somebody who's going to take your direction. So basically the first stage is we have the dog look at the person. When the dog's looking, the person just shrugs forward and goes back. We don't want to reward the dog if it barks or lunges or growls. We're not going to correct it. It just doesn't get the reward. And so if going like this causes her to growl, then I might just go like this. And then you get a reward. And then eventually a little bit more with a little bit of shoulder shrug, then I'm moving forward, then I'm actually leaning forward like this and going back. And each time we reset back to the neutral original position. And I go like this far. And all these things would be followed by a treat. Now, one other thing, because this is an issue here. There's one person in the house who really is not a big fan of the dog, and the deal was the person does not have to interact with the dog. And because the dog doesn't have any relationship with this person, the dog barks when the person comes in, and probably wants something, wants some attention at some time, but also might say, I disagree because I don't really feel the same way about you as I feel about everybody else. So what you could do is have her basically on a leash, like in the corner of the room, and you set it up so the person could be, and the person has to be cooperative and want to help you. So basically we have the person around the corner, and all the person does is they just stick their head out and just come back while she's looking. And so she sees him stick his head out, and then his head disappears, and then she gets a treat. And in this case, we would say the T word, the person's name. And then basically he shows his head again, and then it goes away, and she gets a treat. So just looking at the T person's name, or looking at his face, gets me a treat, and now we're pairing it with that person's name. So eventually we can put our stick like the doorway you can see to this far, and then eventually the person steps out completely and then goes away. So we're making the interaction as easy as we can. Now we can also set the dog up for success by exercising the dog first, give it 10 minutes to recover, makes it easier for you to practice. Don't overdo it, don't underdo it, you want to find that Goldilocks zone. But the idea is now the presence, all I have to do is look at this person and they're way across the room. So if she barks, then try to move the distance and keep on moving the distance until, and you might have to be like where she's on that side of the yard and he's here, he just turns around the corner here, she sees him, he disappears, and she gets a treat. So, and we say the person's name. So eventually looking at that person means I get a treat, but only if I look at them. If I bark at them, or I growl at them, or lunge at them, there's no treats. There's no punishment, but there's also no treats. So now the dog is conditioned and motivated to like looking at the person, because that means something good and positive is going to happen. Coco. Come. Remember, anytime you give a treat, the treat goes in the mouth first, you say the command word second. And you notice how I left my hand there? She's come back 2 other times and interacted with my hand. When I first got here, she was so scared of me, she literally pooped herself. And now she's coming back a 4th time to my hand. See how her feet are underneath her? Usually the back legs are out behind when a dog's insecure. It wants to be able to run away really quick. I haven't tried to pet her. Part of that is why this has been helpful. So anyways, I'm getting a little bit off track on this. So basically for this technique, anything that she reacts to, I want you to ask yourself, how can I recreate that situation? How can I break it into small slices and put her in a position where the activity itself that she reacts to, actually I make her get a reward for each step of that activity until eventually I do the whole activity. So your guest gets up and goes to the bathroom, comes back and sits down, and then she gets a treat. So not barking and not lunging is good. Right there, celebrate that, pet her on her chin and say, just pet her, say sit.
Sit.
Perfect. All right, well, that's Coco, and these are some tips and tricks you can use if you have a dog that likes to bark or lunge or growl at people who get up.